Okay, Chair, we're live.
Okay, are we ready to go?
Yes.
Okay. Welcome to the Waverley Local Planning Panel for the 28th of June 2023. On behalf of the panel, we respectfully acknowledge the Indigenous heritage of the Waverley local government area and recognise the ongoing Aboriginal traditional custodianship of this land. I'm Helen Lockhead, Chair of the panel today, and I'm joined by two experts, Stuart MacDonald, if you want to raise your hand, Stuart, and Peter Brennan. Thank you. And Community Rep, Penny Mora. Thanks, Penny. The public meeting is recorded and being live streamed on YouTube. We have 6 items on the agenda today, and each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the panel, and then an alarm will sound. Please wrap up once the alarm is sound to give everyone a fair hearing. And also please remain on mute unless you're being called to speak to the panel. We have no apologies today, and I'd just like to confirm with the panel members if they have any conflicts of interest that they need to notify us of before we commence the meeting.
Yes, I have a conflict of interest on item 1.
Okay, thanks, Penny. So, and I understand you'll withdraw for that item. Thank you.
Nothing to declare, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, I have no conflicts to declare, Madam Chair.
Thank you. And I don't have any conflicts to declare either. So thank you, everyone. Site inspections have been made in accordance with the panel's operating procedures, and the panel members have all independently inspected the site. The panel has been provided with the council office report and all the submissions made. For those addressing the panel today, please note the panel have all read through each submission, so please focus on the relevant planning considerations of concern associated with the application. If your points have already been stated by other objectors, there is no need to repeat what has been already said, other than to affirm your agreement if that is the case. At the conclusion of the meeting, we will consider each application in a closed session, and the determinations will be on council's website as soon as possible. So from here on, we'll call the first item, and let me see which one it is. The first item we have is 27 Thompson Street, Panorama. And the first speaker to address the panel is Alistair Knox.
Hello, do you have me?
Yes, I think so. Yes, we do.
That's good. My name's Alistair Knox. I'm a solicitor and I've been asked to speak on behalf of Mr. Neil Wong of 29 Thompson Street, Panorama. I understand I require leave to speak on his behalf today, so I'll seek that leave.
Yes, that's okay.
Thank you. Madam Chair and panel members, I'm speaking on behalf of Mr. Neil Wong, who owns 29 Thompson Street, Tamarama, which is the property immediately to the east and downhill from the subject site. I refer to a written objection prepared by my firm dated 9 March 2023, which I understand has been considered as part of the assessment report. I also understand that that objection was prepared on the basis of a previous set of plans, and upon reading the assessment report, I see that consideration has been given to that objection. Some amendments have been made, including the increase of the side setbacks and also a more detailed look at the shadow impacts on my client's property. So I appreciate that that has happened. I just wanted to make one quick point with respect to the clause 4.6 variation requests for both height and FSI on this matter. Look, I will say that having variations to both height and FSR, and I think height's in the magnitude of 34% and FSR's about 10%, is representative of an overdevelopment of the site. I've read the clause 4.6 submissions prepared for each of those. And to summarise, the 2 main environmental planning grounds which are relied upon are the envelope of the existing building and the topography of the site. With respect to the envelope of the existing building, I'd submit that this should be given very little or no weight where this application is for demolition and construction of a new building. It's not for alterations and additions. And that's particularly so where the existing building is quite anomalous in the street and is sited differently to its neighbours and is much higher than its neighbouring properties. So I'd say that the existing building should be given no weight. With respect to the topography of the site, I certainly acknowledge that it's quite unique. It's steeply sloping both front to back and side to side. And it's common for this to be used as an environmental planning ground to justify either additional height or FSR, but not both. The issue with using it to justify both is it's like having your cake and eating it too. Normally you would say that you can achieve some additional FSR within an excavated space under a building where you are otherwise complying with the height blanket and that has no impact. Or you would say that due to the existing ground level of the site, you need to go up a bit higher over the height blanket, but you're otherwise complying with the FSR. The problem with using it to do both is they sort of contradict each other, those two arguments, because if you can achieve the reasonable FSR under the height limit, then you should do so. And if you need to go up to achieve the acceptable FSR, then you can do it, but doing both sort of contradicts each other. Then with respect to the privacy impacts, which are discussed in our objection, there are oversized terraces proposed as part of this application, and there is reliance upon landscaping to mitigate those privacy impacts, which is contrary to the planning principle in Super Studio. I'll just say that. If the panel is minded to approve the application, I just wanted to comment on 3 conditions. Firstly, on landscaping, although the landscaping is used to justify the oversized terraces and mitigate the privacy impacts, there's no conditions proposed either prior to OC requiring that landscaping to be actually installed, or as an operative condition requiring that landscaping to be maintained for the life of the development. So I would ask that to happen to ensure that that mitigation of privacy is afforded to my client.
So 3 minutes is up.
Okay, can I just address 2 more conditions very quickly?
Just very briefly, please.
Yep, that's fine. Condition number 27 is about construction times. It says with respect to excavation works that they can be done between 7 a.m. and 5 p.m. I understand it's normal for heavy excavation works to not occur before 9 a.m. And then with respect to the plant and pool pump of this site, I just asked for there to be some condition ensuring acoustic certification of them prior to occupation certificate. Thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Next person is William Maynard from 18 Thompson Street.
Good afternoon. I'm here today on behalf of the owners of 18 Thompson Street, Bill Chambers and Martina Papathanassiou. And the owners hold 2 concerns around traffic management, and the second is excavation. And so to begin with traffic management, I guess the panel should be aware, and I'm sure they are, of the problems with this deep one-way end of Thompson Street. And it should not be dismissed as mere inconvenience, as the council state in their assessment. This narrow section of the end of the street provides access to 5 properties, 23, 25, 27 and 16 under construction, as well as 18. And by design, it is a bottleneck. And obviously, if the street is used as loading for the site of 27, it will completely cut off 18 Thompson Street from their driveway during the time delivery occurs. But this is not the reason that traffic management is a concern to the owners of 18 Thompson Street. During their 30 years of occupying the property, there have been multiple instances of vehicles losing control on this steep one-way street, mounting the gutters, knocking into poles, street signs, and running over adjacent landscaping. And this narrow end of the street, it should be said, is also a shared pedestrian pathway. And there's real potential for a serious accident here. So put simply, heavy vehicle excavation, trucks, diggers that will be loading these trucks will block a pedestrian pathway for several years. And we asked the panel to consider the safety of the community walking through this construction site, because in effect, the scenario will be that pedestrians will be squeezing past idling trucks being loaded with rubble. And that would be 270 cubic metres of bedrock in the whole existing dwelling, leaving via a pedestrian beach walkway. So from this perspective, we see it as negligent to approve the traffic management control plan as requiring 18 Thompson Street for the loading of the rubble. And we asked that a safer alternative be considered as a condition of consent. And if this is not a consideration of consent, I guess we can only assume that the panel is sanctioning a high-risk traffic management option by blocking a pedestrian path to the beach. To point 2, excavation extent. I guess the other key aspects.
Can I just ask a question before you go on to the next point? So what would you like to see? I mean, assuming that they have a right to construct a dwelling on this site and that it does take a significant period to construct. There will be some sort of interruption or disruption to normal conditions. So what would you like to see?
Of course. We suggest, given that there are 2 frontages to the property, a prudent option to manage the risk would be to consider a condition of the approval to remove the rock and excavated material via Tamarama Marine Drive, i.e. the northern boundary of 27 Thompson Street. And here, there could also be a temporary parking and unloading area in the lower part of 27 Thompson Street. And may I say that the recent works conducted by Council widening the footpath and new streetlights on Tamarama Marine Drive in 2022 appeared to work relatively seamlessly. And we would say that this substantiates a precedent for construction works and a loading and unloading zone to be on Marine Drive. And this would most definitely be a safer alternative to blocking a pedestrian pathway to the beach and blocking access for multiple dwellings along the one-way end of Thompson Street.
Right, and your second point? Thank you for that.
Right. Excavation extent. So given the proximity to 21 Thompson Street, which is the deep excavation several doors up, there appears to be an error in the history of the degree of fortification, the piling, that exists between 21 and 23. So essentially on the eastern wall of the large hole that exists, we see a discrepancy. And I'll just refer you to Bill Chambers' email 24 April 23 to David Knight at Council. In the report 35482B by JK Geotechnics, they state that the piled retaining walls were constructed along the side boundaries with props providing lateral support to the piled walls. This recommendation, in fact, end quote, this recommendation, in fact, was not carried out due to a questionable revision made in 2015. There are currently no piled retaining walls along the eastern boundary of 21 Thompson Street. These piles were deleted by the then builder and certifier of 21 Thompson at a site meeting in 2015, whereby the previously approved 26-column piling was specified. Given this confusion, let's call it, regarding 21 Thompson Street's eastern wall fortification, we believe it's vitally important that the conditions of 27 Thompson Street have a review of the JK Geotechnics report and correct all misconceptions around what was undertaken by the then owner and then builder and certifier of 21 Thompson Street. If we were to proceed with the current report by JK Geotechnics, substantially misleading history will be embedded into some deep excavation, and it could subsequently have grave consequences for all stakeholders. We believe that what will be exposed is a grossly negligent sequence of events that haven't been adequately documented by either previous owner of 21 Thompson, applicants of 27, or in fact the council. So, again, if I put it simply, the eastern wall of 21 Thompson is not retained and piled to the degree that the report by JK Geotechnics assumes, and we'd submit that at least an independent assessment of the geotechnical peculiarities should be considered.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and look, I end by saying that we don't object per se to the development, but just stress these two concerns from a public safety and risk perspective. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. Panel, do you have any questions of the objector before we move on to the applicant?
No, thanks.
No, I have no questions.
Penny? No? I can't see everyone on the screen, unfortunately.
Penny's not in.
Penny's in the waiting room.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, she's okay, right. Okay, and so Madeline Blanchfield, would you like to respond to some of the issues raised by the objectors?
Sure. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, panel. I won't go through everything in detail. You have the report. We have worked closely with Council and made some amendments through the process. So what I will do is just address some of those amendments, which I think some of the objectors are not aware of. Firstly, we did consider alts and adds, obviously, because our client was keen to maximise the height and scale of the building based on what was already there. But demolition and rebuild was the only way to create a better connection and position of the bulk and scale of the building on the site. So being sympathetic to the location and the views from the beach, that was the route we went down. And, from our client's perspective, that is a big sacrifice. And we do think that it is justified that the existing building be considered in the process because it could have been largely retained. There are no amenities impacts due to the breaches of height or FSR, and the breach of FSR is quite minimal. It's under 10%. So I just wanted to highlight that. During our changes with Council, we added screens to the west for privacy. Now, they're not conditioned in the report because they've been added to our drawing, and hopefully that will address some of the concerns raised by number 29 Thompson. Part of our resubmission to Council was also to have a second geotechnical report done. So the first one was done by JK Geotechnics, but the second one, a separate and independent geotechnical engineer, White Geotechnics, has provided a report. So obviously everyone's concerned about excavation in that area, and we want to do everything we can to make sure that that doesn't create any additional stress. Finally, just in terms of the screens, Council advised that planting can't be relied on for privacy, and so that has been addressed in our amended set of drawings. In terms of traffic management, look, it may be possible to do the build from Tamarama Marine Drive, but that's it has other complications because it's obviously a very public road and there's nowhere to slow down or pull off on it. So that's something that if the panel wanted us to have a look at an amended construction management plan, we would be happy to do that. And otherwise, we're thankful for Council's work with us and hope that the recommendation can be accepted. And if you had any other questions, just let us know.
Okay, thank you very much. Panel, are there any questions, Peter or Stuart?
Nothing, thanks.
Yeah, the only question, as I understand, there's been no construction management plan prepared to date. Is that the case, Madeline?
No, not an official one. We've just done some internal, work in conversation with builders, but that would normally come a bit later.
But ultimately, you'll do some initial work, and I would presume that you will then consult with Council's traffic engineers to get their input.
Yeah, usually there's a process during the construction certificate phase where that all gets resolved. So it's not I don't believe that it's actually a part of this approval now to say how the construction is done. And it hasn't been locked in as yet that it's done.
And that ultimately will be approved by council, not by a private certifier.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. There's a condition on that, Peter. 19
19, which
requires a construction management plan for the approval of the council's Director of Infrastructure Services.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay,
That's all I have. Yeah.
great. Okay, thank you very much. And thank you for everyone who's talked to this item. We'll now move on to the next item, which is 91 Fletcher Street, Tamarama. So if you could ask Penny to come back into the room, please. And we have no submissions on this, but we have Luke Durack, the applicant, to address the panel.
Hi.
Oh, sorry, we can't hear you. You're just breaking up a little bit. Are you?
Is that any better?
Yes, that sounds better. Thank you. So there's been no submissions received, and there's been an amendment to condition 13 on this application. Do you have any issues with that amended condition with regard to the fire safety? Are you able to hear us?
Sorry, Helen, are you getting me now?
Yes, sorry, did you hear what I just said?
No, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay, sorry, I'll just repeat what I said. That we've had no submissions, but council officers have amended condition 13 with regard to the fire safety requirements. Have you seen that amended condition, and is that satisfactory?
No, I haven't seen it, Helen. Yeah, other than that, I didn't have anything to add. It was just two questions, but is that amended condition available to see?
Yes, it should be. I mean, the panel has it, so
they only got it late. Yeah, the report late yesterday afternoon. So
yeah. So, is it possible for someone from council to send that to the?
Hi, Helen. Yeah, I can forward it on.
Yeah, perhaps if you could do that, and you could have a look and maybe just advise the council officers if you've got any issues with that. But it basically says, it basically requires that with these works that the fire upgrade is required. So.
Yeah, there was just some discussion about the wording of the clauses that was being looked at. But okay, so I'll just engage with council planners outside of this meeting.
Well, if you could have a quick look and respond, in real time, that would be great. Of course, we'll deliberate on that after this public meeting in our closed session. So it would just be good if you had any real concerns or issues. Yep. We were notified ASAP.
So is that being emailed to me now? Is it?
Yes, I understand. Who's going to send that through?
Me, Joe.
Yeah,
I'll send that.
Joe Sacanaro is going to send it to you now. So
okay, thanks.
If you could read it and respond to Joe ASAP, then we'll be able to conclude the determination in our closed session. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you very much. Is there any other questions of the panel for Luke Durack?
No, Madam Chair.
No, thank you.
Okay, great. All right, well, thanks, Luke, if you could address that, and then we'll go on to our next item, which is item 3, 5 Pacific Avenue, Tamarama, which is a modification to an existing apartment building. And we have no submissions for this one, but we do have speakers registered on behalf of the applicant to address the panel: Lee Cosnetta, Mark Shapiro, and Vaughan Blank. If you could address the meeting if you have any issues to raise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, panel. My name is Lee Cosnetta. I'll address the panel. Effectively, Mark, as the architect, is here, and Vaughan is the owner, in case there's any questions that I can't answer, but otherwise they may not be required. This proposal is a fairly simple modification application that deals with a number of refinements that arose during detailed design development since the original approval. The envelope and height of the building remains the same, and the architectural language is essentially unchanged, with most of the refinements being internal and addressing services and circulation improvements. Council's report endorses the modifications and there were no objections, so I don't have anything specific to contribute except to say that the suggested car parking condition from Council's engineers is contrary to the DCP, and we are seeking its correction. The condition is number 53. It appears on page 138 of your papers and requires a visitor parking space. The assessment that led to this condition is on page 130, and it says that the DCP allows a maximum of 6 resident parking spaces and requires 1 visitor parking space. That is not correct. The DCP does allow for a maximum of 6 resident spaces, yes, but there is no requirement for visitor parking for a development with only 4 units, and we do not propose a visitor parking space. We propose our 6 car spaces to be used by the residents of the 4 units, consistent with the 1.5 spaces per unit control in the DCP. This already represents a low quota of parking for family-sized apartments, where 2 out of the 4 apartments will only have 1 space. If the traffic engineer's recommended condition is not changed, only 1 unit will have 2 parking spaces and all 3 other family-sized apartments will have 1. This would be contrary to the DCP controls, which include specific provisions that prioritise residential parking spaces over visitor spaces. And even without that, it would mistakenly impose visitor parking when none is required for a development of this size, contrary to the numerical standards in the DCP. As the panel is aware, evaluation procedures in the EP&A Act tell us that once you meet DCP compliance with a numerical standard, the consent authority cannot impose more onerous standards. We are in full compliance with the DCP on parking rates. And so we're therefore requesting the panel correct condition 53. To do this, it would be deleting subpoint B for the visitor space and updating subpoint A to reflect the compliant 6 spaces instead of the 5 that are currently written. Subject to this correction, we're in full agreement with the report and we ask the panel to support the application. Thank you.
Is there anything else that you wanted to raise, or is it just that?
Just that issue, thank you. All other conditions are agreed.
We did have advice from Council's traffic engineer that the DCP rounds up and that the calculation is 0.8 spaces and therefore it's rounded up to 1. And that's why it is 1 visitor car space that is required in this development. So it can either round down or round up, but because the calculation is 0.8, it rounds up to 1.
But that's not correct, and it's not the way that the DCP has been interpreted consistently across Waverley's development pattern. There's a requirement for 1 parking space per 5 units. It's not a rate of 1 in 5. This has been discussed in many court cases, and a development of 4 units does not require visitor parking rates. Even if that wasn't accepted, there is a further provision that says that prioritisation is for residential parking spaces over visitor, but you don't get to that point because the DCP doesn't require visitors for dwelling houses, dual occupancies, and up to 4 units. And that's what's written.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll take that on notice, and you've made your point. Are there any questions from the panel?
Thank you.
No, I have no questions.
Penny?
No, I don't have.
All right. Okay. Thank you very much, Lee. And we will progress to the next item.
Thank you.
Which is 22 Wiley Street. There have been a number of submissions, and so we'll hear from the objectors first. And the first objector is Ms. L. Stefanov from 24 Wiley Street. Linda, okay. Are you able to address the panel?
Hi, yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
If you can, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, and panel members for your time. And I appreciate you accepting my request to share my concern. I'm the owner of the adjoining semi. I'd like to start by saying I appreciate the amendments already made in the application. Unfortunately, as you've probably already read through from my submission on Monday, unfortunately, they are of little benefit. From my perspective, I'm still really worried about privacy and also amenity. And I think you'll see from the other objections of the other neighbours that they're also seeing this as a significant concern. So I'm respectfully asking the panel to consider placing an additional condition on the development approval. And just to share a little bit of my story, you'll see from the photo that I sent on Monday from the setback that council relies on, the 2.155 metres. With the current 100% glass door Juliet balcony design, all of my privacy is still lost. I don't know what the technical terms are for this, but sharing it in my own words, what it means for me in my home is that I don't feel like it would be an enjoyable space or a safe space when I can be seen at every angle. And if I can see others from my backyard. It doesn't enhance the livability for me or for other people around that area. And it doesn't really provide a great base or separation between neighbours. And I'd be really worried about the constant use of my backyard, whether it's noise, whether it's visually, smell, etc. So I'm asking the panel to consider leveraging their experience, and I'm hopeful that with that we can find a solution that provides a balance between good design and a reasonable outcome for everyone. I've listed a few options in terms of potentially mitigating the concern that I have around privacy, and I can go through those. A couple of if the applicant is fixed on the design solution of a Juliet balcony, I'd respectfully ask that the council consider calculating an appropriate setback based on the average of all of the other first floors in the area, and in any event, set back the first floor by a further metre. The room's a really large room. It's 5.236 metres by 5.413 metres. So a pushback of 1 metre, I think would give a reasonable separation between my backyard and the enjoyment of the bedroom. A couple other options is potentially if the applicant isn't wedded to the Juliet balcony, having a different wall configuration, and the options that come from that, the percentage split between window and wall, or even fixed louvers. And the other option is potentially to have a different design, as I've mentioned in my submission on Monday.
Okay. So you've addressed both your privacy and amenity issues in that statement. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Hopefully.
No. I just wanted to make sure that you'd covered what you wanted to say. Panel, are there any questions of Lee? No? You can just shake your heads if that's easier.
No,
No,
nothing. Thanks.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you very much, and thanks for your time today. The next speaker will
Thank
be
you.
A. Davies from 20 Wiley Street. Do we have A. Davies here in the room?
I don't think they're registered to speak. They just lodged a submission.
Okay, all right. Is there anyone, M. Swain? Oh, no, sorry. Yeah.
You're reading down the list of people
Actually,
who
no,
made.
I'm reading submissions. Sorry. Okay. All right. So we can have a response from the applicant now. So I've got here Jenny Askin from A Square Planning and Rob Burwell from Black Lion Studio. If either of you want to address the issues raised in the submissions and any other issues with conditions that you want to raise.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jenny Askin. So I'm the planning consultant acting on behalf of the applicant. I'd like to thank you for first off for the opportunity to address you this afternoon. We welcome the recommendation of the report and we have no concerns with the conditions as recommended. The proposal that's before you has come about from addressing a deferral that was issued by council, particularly relating to the rear setback, visual privacy, the principal ridge and shadow plans. The amended documentation addressed these concerns and has resulted in the recommendation of approval from council staff. I'll just touch on a couple of issues that have been raised, particularly by the neighbour, and then happy to answer any questions. Rob Burwell, the architect as well, is available to answer any questions. In terms of the rear setback was increased from that originally submitted at first floor level, and it is considered to be in keeping with the predominant rear setback at first floor level. This is shown on the plan at A005, and I note that this is a predominant rear setback control and not an average control. And I note that there is a mix of rear setbacks at first floor level. The proposed ground floor addition does not extend beyond the adjoining semi, and then the proposed first floor addition does not extend beyond the rear building line at 16, 30 and 32A. As illustrated in the shadow diagrams, the first floor addition will have a negligible impact only at 2 p.m. and no impact at any other time in terms of overshadowing. Another issue that was raised in the deferral related to the principal roof ridge, and this will actually match the adjoining semi at 24. It will also ensure that it will assist actually with buildability and it will be much neater and provide a more resilient connection between the two dwellings, particularly in terms of water ingress, I should say. I just want to note that the FSR is compliant, and in addition, the garage is not counted as FSR. With respect to privacy, the first floor is now set back 2.6 metres from the rear building line at ground level, and this provides suitable separation between the rear yards of the neighbouring properties. This was agreed to as well by the council officer. That rear facing window at first floor level is a bedroom, and it is set within privacy screens at each end. And then obviously the roof above the ground floor is non-trafficable. In our minds, that this actually achieves adequate privacy and does provide that adequate separation from the rear open space of the adjoining properties. To conclude, I just want to mention that the proposal will provide a suitable first floor addition, protecting the visual amenity of the street with a form that is suitable, having regard to the semi-detached nature. And it is acceptable in terms of the amenity of adjoining properties. And this has been concluded, has been the conclusion as well of council staff. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Would you consider operable windows as opposed to fully opening doors? Suggested by the,
So in terms of to address the privacy concern, so just to understand what the intent of that is, so you're saying that there will be louvers for the full extent of the glazing?
Well, it doesn't. I don't think that was prescribing louvers. I think what they were trying to ensure was that there wasn't a sort of an overreach in terms of hanging up the doors, overhanging the balcony. I think it was more about having the enabling the visual connection without necessarily the openness to the adjoining backyards enjoyment?
Yeah, so obviously it's our contention that the privacy has been minimised, that overlooking has been minimised. I mean, we could consider maybe at each end having something that is more fixed, but then having the ability to have doors open within that central section. And then that coupled with the privacy screens as we've shown would ensure minimal overlooking.
Okay, I'll ask the panel if they have any questions or concerns as well. Thank you.
Yeah, just one question, and it relates to something Jenny mentioned about the flashing and the buildability. In the condition 2 general modifications, the council proposed at A, the first floor level is to preserve the existing roof capping, so there is no exposed flashing facing the street. So the way I read that is all you'll see is the existing ridge line, unlike the adjoining semi to the south at 24, where there is an exposed flashing.
I might actually get the architect just to comment on that, but that's not how I've...
Yeah, I'm happy to comment on that. That's fine. 1 second.
Rob, if you're available.
Hello?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, Rob Burwell here. With regards to the capping, my understanding was that we would essentially keep a normal ridge capping rather than see a flashing, but the addition would still be seen just above that capping.
I don't think that's what the council proposed. The way I read the condition is that you won't see that flashing from the street. Maybe the council officer could clarify that.
Yeah, could that be clarified, please?
Could you try again?
Through the chair, council officer here. The intention is not to show any exposed flashing at the front of the when viewed from the street, which is exemplified at number 24. That's the intention.
Right. So you essentially would see a ridge cap as opposed to flashing. Is that correct?
Yes. So there'd be ridge. We would want ridge capping seen.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the intention.
Yeah, I'm happy with that condition. That's fine.
Okay. Thank you. There's no.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Maybe Jenny would like to comment on the conversion of, I don't know what the space is at the moment, into a garage. I presume it's a bedroom or a sitting room. Would you like to comment on that?
Yeah, so obviously this dwelling is a bit unusual. It has a history of having been used as a corner shop, so it has that addition to the front. It's currently used, from memory, the architect might clarify, as a bedroom or as a living area anyway. So the intention is that this is an opportunity to provide on-street parking and obviously get a car off the street. And it can be done without adding to the overall bulk of the building. So we can work within that existing envelope. The only change that has to occur is just that minor opening to allow for a car to go in. I know that there's a condition for it to be a minimum of 2.2 meters in height, which is not a problem. We can comply with that. There is also some vegetation that's just in front of it, but that's been identified by council as not being worthy of retention. Council's tree officer has looked at that. Also, I'd just like to confirm as well, I know it had been raised in an objection, that it will only result in the loss of one on-street space. And obviously then it will gain an off-street space. So it's the ability to actually get parking in without having to significantly change the envelope of the building. And I know a neighbour has as well had raised concerns about a precedence that this was set, but obviously this building is quite different from other buildings within the street.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, can I just circle back to the glazing proposed at the bedroom, first floor bedroom? So just looking, perhaps the architect might be best placed to respond to this. Drawing 201, which is the first floor plan. Are they the form of the glazing? It looks like it's sliding panels. Are they?
Correct. Yeah.
So
there's essentially one fixed panel and 3 sliders.
Yeah. So it would, from floor to ceiling, it would effectively open up that wall.
That's correct.
Entirely. Yeah. And then the Juliet balcony, on that same drawing, there's a notation there that it's a non-trafficable roof.
That's correct. Yeah.
So does that include the balcony or not? Because the words actually appear to go over where that small balcony is.
Yeah. So that essentially you've got the sliding doors and then you've got the balustrade stopping anyone going onto that portion of roof.
But that balustrade, is that depicted by the dotted line?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah. So the balustrade actually sits on the non-trafficable roof area.
Yes, slightly behind, between the sliding doors and the roof itself.
Yeah, so it's not that dotted line on the trafficable roof. It's actually the dotted line in behind those red.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yeah.
The dotted line that comes out to the roof is the privacy, the nibs that come out at the end of each balcony.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
So you won't physically be able to step out onto that roof. You would still be within the floor area of the bedroom. It would just be doors that would open.
Okay.
Although I'm not
drawing, sorry, A400. That's the section through that, the long section through the building.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how those nibs actually provide any screening, really, because I mean, you just stand on the middle of the room or the side of the room to actually look into someone's backyard. They're not particularly screening.
It will provide some.
Yeah, it'll provide some. You're right, but not significant.
We didn't want to extend them too far because then that has an effect on shadows. So it was trying to get, a balance.
Yeah, I acknowledge that. Okay. Any other questions?
Nothing further from me. Thank you.
I guess it's just a comment to the applicant. Plans show that a substantial portion of the existing dwelling is to be demolished and there's only a few walls are retained. I think you should be mindful of council's position that if during the construction, if this was approved and those walls come down, you'll be looking at a new DA.
Yeah, noted.
Shown as existing, yes.
Okay. Thank you. Only a comment.
Noted.
Okay, all right. Thank you. If there's no more questions from the panel, we'll move on to the next item. The next one is 25 Princess Street, Rose Bay. We had one speaker registered who made a submission, which is Mr. G. Nicola from 27 Princess Street.
They haven't registered to speak, just a submission.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So I only have representatives from the applicant's side, which is Ellie Gesher from Navan Planning and William McKee, designer. Is there anyone from the applicant's team here who wants to address the panel?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'll address the panel. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, perfect. Well, thank you for the opportunity to talk to the panel today. We have reviewed the council's report and obviously we accept the recommendation for approval. I don't think there is anything else to say more than that, but between myself and the architect, we're available if there's any questions from the panel.
I don't have any questions. Does anyone else have any questions?
No, thank you.
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Well, we don't have any questions. So if you're fine, we're fine with that. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Okay. And the the next one is 53 to 55 and 57 to 59 Hall Street, Bondi. We have no registered to speak. We've had a number of submissions made, but none have registered to speak today. And so we can go straight to the applicant, Lee Cosnetta, and PPD Architects, if you would like to address the panel.
Thank you, Madam Chair again. Thank you, panel. Thank you to Katie Johnson for a comprehensive report on this application. Katie took a particularly consultative approach to working through design amendments and requests for additional information, which we're really grateful for. Before publishing this report, Katie advised us of what all of the non-standard conditions of consent might look like, and that's provided myself and the architects a chance to work through the changes. In the past 2 weeks, we've been able to refine our plans, and I can confirm that all of the requested changes in the general mods condition are workable and will provide an improved outcome, as Katie suggested. Subject to the panel's endorsement of those changes, we'll be in a position to provide council with updated plans satisfying the condition within the next couple of weeks. More broadly, I've reviewed the whole report and agree with Katie's assessment and recommendation for approval. The report concludes that the clause 4.6 for a modest height breach is well founded and notes the proposal complies with the FSR development standard as well as DCP building envelope controls. I note that objective concerns have been addressed in the report and resolved by either previous design amendments or conditions of consent, all of which are agreed. There is one technical correction I'd like to the panel to make on one of the conditions, and I've mentioned this in an email to Katie last week after publication of the report. It's for condition 69, which appears on page 370 of your papers. It again relates to parking, but to Katie's credit, I believe this is our fault. The condition, and I'll explain in a minute, the condition miscounts the total number of car spaces and the total number of commercial car spaces. So the total number of car spaces we seek is actually 35, not 34 at the top of that condition. And this is because the actual number of commercial parking spaces is 12, not 11, which is in subpoint D. The DCP allows us between 0 and 16 spaces. So whether it's 11 or 12, we still continue to comply with the controls in accordance with Katie's assessment. To explain the discrepancy, if I can take the panel to drawing DA 102, it appears on page 382 of your papers. In that basement level plan, there are commercial parking spaces to the right and the left of the core. What I believe's happened is, in counting the parking spaces on the right-hand side, the panel might notice that they are numbered commercial parking space 1 and moving up the page, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Coming across to the left-hand side of the plan, counting again 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 2. That should say 12. And so I believe the officers have seen 11 as the highest number and assumed they're 11, they're in fact 12. Subject to that correction, we're in full agreement with the report and ask the panel to accept the recommendation for approval. PBD Architects are available for any questions you might have, as am I.
Panel members, Stuart, do you have a question maybe about the waste storage?
Yeah, thank you. Lee, just you might be able to, you or the architect may be able to clarify this. That waste holding area at the ground level, is that a fully enclosed space? It's just that it's not included in your GFA calculations. I've no problem with it being there, and I think you're probably going to lose floor space anyway as a result of some of those conditions. So it's very much a technical issue. And we discussed this briefly in our pre-meeting briefing. The old chestnut of what's in and what's out of GFA.
Yeah.
So look, I'm no problem with its location, and you've put a lid on it in response to the objection, and council's happy with it. I just want to just looking at the front elevation, it looks like it's got a full height screen at the front, which is really a wall for all intents and purposes, but open at the rear. Have I summarised that correctly?
Almost, Stuart. Thank you. The door effectively at the front of the garbage holding area is designed as an open slatted door, so that it has a level of transparency, and there is a roof over part of the side passage to the end of the garbage holding area, beyond which to the right, to the north, is open. The whole area is being treated with the same paving treatment. It'll be waterproof to be exposed to inclement weather, and being open at one end entirely, other than the roof over, and being open with a not insignificantly open gate. We've excluded that area following some of the guidance from other cases in the Land Environment Court definitions. So we're comfortable that it's to be excluded from GFA. I guess the technical consequences, if that is included, the panel doesn't have in front of it a clause 4.6 variation for floor space if indeed we exceed it, because at the moment we're on the dollar for GFA within a square metre, I believe. So it's technical, but it's an important exclusion, and we believe under the definitions that it's an excluded open to inclement weather space.
Yeah, okay. Look, we'll probably run through it in a bit more detail with council officers and be guided by them ultimately. So, but thanks for your explanation. That's useful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions for Lee before we let him go?
No, Madam Chair.
Okay. Thank you. So we've now heard from all the speakers on all the items. So we will actually now retire and deliberate in the closed session. And I'd just like to advise that our decisions will be available on the council website as soon as possible. So this is the end of the public meeting, and I thank all the speakers for the time they've made